if you are speaking about a conservative political movement, need the proper size country to lead, politically speaking. And happily enough, now we have some chances. France probably should lead politically that kind of pan-European conservative movement. But on the other side, the question is more than reasonable because Hungary is far more active now in the international arena than we were. And there are three reasons for that. The first is that using the pandemic as an occasion, the bureaucracy in Brussels tried to suffocate Hungary financially. Probably not many of you followed that, but they created a new financial system, which is a perfect instrument to blackmail countries who do not behave well on ideological sense. And therefore, countries like Hungary and Poland before were literally blackmailed financially to give up our policy on migration, on gender, on traditional values and so on. That's a huge change. So it's an attempt to suffocate Hungary and Poland previously financially. So we have to react on that. If you are attacking internationally that high level, you have to be more active. That's one of the reasons why Hungary is more active internationally than we were previously. The second is that something bad is going on here in Brussels and in the European Union. During the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen, the whole political commission became more and more politicized. And they started to behave not as guardian of the treaty, but as a political actor. And that brings the European Union at the verge of freedom and oppression, like yesterday's story exactly exemplified where we are. So we have to fight for freedom more in Europe. So that's make us more active. And the third one is that there are some news from Western countries of an everyday suppression. That if a normal worker in his working location just make a remark about anti-migration, anti-gender, against the war, he can lose very easily his job. It's not a high-level political discussion, it's an everyday, we use the term everyday fascism, everyday communism. It's an everyday oppression, which is growing in many countries of European Union. So those who fight for freedom or fought for freedom as we did, we have to be active again. So what was our decision? Our decision was that if this is the case, we should create a kind of conservative civic society for all the conservatives who would like to fight for freedom. And Hungary is a proper place for that. Because very difficult to define what's going on in Hungary, Leftists try to do it in a very ugly way to define what the hell is going on in Hungary, but we can say one thing surely, that if you look at Europe today, it's a kind of progressive liberal ocean. And that is an island, a country which does differently. So Hungary is the island of difference at this moment in Europe, which is a proper place for the conservatives to come, speak freely, to discuss, and probably plan some common political action for the future. So this is the change. So self-defense, danger of democracy, danger of freedom, and a good example of Hungary, which can be helpful to create a kind of conservative civic society. The sense of this European election is change the leadership. What is election for? The sense of election is that if the leadership proves to be bad, must be replaced. That's so simple. And this leadership of European Union it's not just a political statement, it's very much factual. So it's a leadership as in every country. They selected certain issues in the last 5 years. And they promise that they will manage that issue. Let's say, green transition. Green transition is failed. Not properly engineered, so they have to recalculate again. Agriculture. They promised a better agriculture, now the farmer community is suffering all around Europe. They said competitiveness will be improved in these 5 years. So competitiveness of Europe is declining. They said that they will stop and manage somehow the migration crisis. Migration crisis is bigger than earlier. Then they said that they will introduce some sanctions to stop the war. Ukrainian-Russian war. The war is going on. So if a leadership promising something, let's say 5 or 6 important points for the community, and fail to deliver, they have to leave. Go away. We need new leadership. That's
What is your view of the use of the term populism? I think that you avoid it. Why?
First, may I have a remark on nationalism?
Yes.
Okay. In our language, in our culture, nationalism has a positive sense, and positive meaning. But in West, it's not the case. Because in the West, and especially in Germany, they have an understanding of their political history that all the major crimes and bad things, catastrophe in their history was created by national level. And the international level was the solution. Look at like Nazis, yeah? In Central Europe, it's just the opposite. In our history, all problem was created by international communities, and the good answer was national reply, you know? So therefore, in our mind, nationalism is a solution, is a good answer, and a kind of good resistance against the empire. I'm an old man, an old fox in the job, and I remember how was the intellectual level of the political discussion, let's say 30 years ago. Having discussion with Helmut Kohl, Jacques Chirac, even Tony Blair, you know. So the intellectual content, substance of the political discussions 20, 30 years ago was not like today, you know. Today everything is about a kind of fight of language. It does not matter what is the substance, because it has a political meaning of certain categories and you are bombed, you know, you are bombed. And populism is that kind of negative stigma which they use against you if the liberals don't like it. But if we try to be serious, what is populism about? Because originally it has a sense. It was not as publicly used as today. Populism was a well-known category saying that there are candidates for leadership who promising nice and good things, being aware that if they are in power, they will not be able to fulfill that. They will not be able to deliver. That was populism. But to be accused as a Hungarian Prime Minister is ridiculous. Because I promised popular things and I delivered all. That's not populism, that's politics, you know? So, public security, I promised public security because that was a mess. Not as a public security. I promised that 1 million more jobs will be created. It's done. I said that we will defend the families against gender propaganda. We did. We promised that we will stop the migration. We stopped, and so on and so on. It's not populism, it's politics. It's leadership.
We thought we defeated the Marxists with the fall of the Berlin Wall. Do you think it's coming back? Is there something to that?
Okay, how was the end of the communism? That was one of the nicest periods of my life. Who's done the communists and who's the Soviet Union out of the country? That was really a joy. How did it happen? So, like just yesterday here, we established Fidesz in '88 as an anti-communist young political organization, and we started to organize meetings. And you know, it was in the second part of the 80s, 88, so it was obvious that it's not as a harsh dictatorship as it was earlier. So some movement has a chance to survive, not that we were not imprisoned and so on, but they did everything not to happen, the free expression of our opinion. So we rented a place in Budapest, and just several hours prior to the meeting, it was said that unfortunately it's not available anymore. And then we looked for another one, and they said that if the runner of the place would supply us some beer and some food, he will be out of the business, you know. So the same kind of pressure technologies which you have experienced here was very common in the second part of the 80s in Hungary. But finally we won. So I think the problem is probably intellectually, Professor, that political leaders discussing too much on political systems, democracy, authoritarian, mix up, blah, blah, blah. But the main question is freedom. Whatever you characterize a political system, the question is oppression versus freedom. And I think freedom in Europe, and especially in Brussels, is in danger.
Yeah, yeah.
Just yesterday,
Yes,
it
yes.
was whether you call it communism or not, we are living in the verge of freedom and oppression in Europe, in the Western civilization. And we have to fight for the freedom. So that's what I can say, that those who love freedom must be united and fought against the forces of oppression, ideologically, politically, the legal system, and so on and so on. So freedom is a serious fight now in Europe again. Just to clarify the position of Hungary on migration. It's true that the number of migrants in Hungary is zero.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason is very simple. The reason is very simple. We have a system which is a fair system. We say that the border is a border. And to cross the border illegally, it's an illegal action. So we can't accept that somebody illegally crossing the border line. You know, it's a crime. It's not a human right something. It's a crime. So therefore, we treat everybody illegally. That's the first. The second is, we understand that many people would like to come, let's say in Hungary. But there is a procedure of that. If you would like to come to Hungary, first you have to pass your request to the Hungarian authorities, let's say in an embassy, let's say in Belgrade, which is a neighboring country capital, and then stay and wait. So nobody can step into the territory of Hungary prior to get the final decision of the Hungarian authorities whether you let you come in or you can't. So you have to wait outside. This is the key issue. And this is the red line. If we are not able to manage that all around Europe, all national authorities to manage the same regulation, that those who would like to come to Europe must stay out and waiting for the answer of the authorities to their request, they can't move earlier than that. So if we are able to manage that, migration is over immediately. This is the solution. That was done by us. In 2016, we created the fence, the border guards, and that kind of legal regulation. Okay. Now let's say something about more philosophically on migration. Because migration now is about civilizations as well. Because whether we say or not, the fact is that we have a Christian tradition continent. It's difficult to say whether we are Christian still or not, but it's a civilization based on Christian roots and traditions. And those who are coming, they are not. They are coming from the Muslim civilization. Okay, so that's raised plenty of complicated questions. And as I mentioned, it's not my job to answer to that, it's your job. But there is one horizon of that question which probably belongs to the doers. And that's lead us to the core, to the heart of conservative thinking. Many definitions exist also, but as a doer I use conservatism, the leaders or the persons or the way of thinking of whom time horizon is high or long. So I have some grandkids. By calculation, reasonable calculation, in 2100 they will leave. So as a grandfather, I am very much interested in the question, what kind of country Hungary will look like in 2100? And I feel some responsibility not to do something which will be bad for the grandkids, not now, but in 2010, or to do everything now which would be helpful to have a good life for them, yeah? So migration has that kind of historical horizon. What kind of civilization Europe will look like? It will be a Muslim civilization, a Christian one, or a mixed something, or what kind of life it will look like. And what I can say that to live in a Christian society, even if it's not as strong as it was, but to live in a Christian society is an amazing thing. The best thing I can imagine to my kids and my grandkids. So why we should give it up? Just in a way to let different kinds of people to change the cultural character of this country. I have nothing against the Muslims. I think Islam is a great civilization. If you go there, I just was 1 week ago in Morocco. That's fantastic. What they have done not having barbarism, but creating a civilization is a big thing, you know, in the geo circumstances where they live. So they created culture, whatever. It's nice there, but don't bring it into and to change if the majority of the society on a democratic basis don't like it. Because I think that nations have the right to decide about their own future. So if somebody would like to make an attempt to create a mixed society, Christian-based with Muslim communities, and as liberals think the outcome will be something good, let's do it. It's your fate, it's your future, but don't force us to do so. So that's what we call the offer of tolerance, what I have made several times to Brussels. I said, guys, you can create whatever migration system you would like to do, but don't force Hungary to do the same thing, because we simply don't believe. We think that mixture of the two civilizations will be not resulted in good things. Public security gone away, the intellectual horizon is totally confused, the value system of societies will be not strong enough to help us to live in a good way. So don't force us to do that. And we organized in Hungary a referendum. So what I'm speaking about is not my personal opinion only. It's not interesting anyway. But the Hungarian society, the only one in Europe, who got a chance to express his own opinion in a referendum, they voted against that. They said that we have to defend the border, we would not like to have a mixed civilization, we would like to control the border crossings, we would like to maintain the Christian traditions of our society. So we have a public decision of our community, how we would like to organize our life. Probably we are not right. But who can say that we are not right? It's our decision. We took the consequences. That's the way. Let us do our life on a national basis as we wish so. So that's our position on migration. It's not just about migration. It's about public order, civilization, and the sovereignty of the nations to decide how they would like to react on this modern phenomena of mass migration. That's the Hungarian position. So, sorry to be too long, but it's a complicated issue.
Is that an appropriate policy or philosophy for all of Europe?
I don't think so. My position was always very simple. Don't create common asylum policy. We have the Geneva Convention about the asylum system, which is accepted not just in Europe but everywhere in the world. That's good and that's enough. We don't need common migration policy of European Union. This issue belongs to the nations. That's my point. It's not very much popular because some countries who already let millions of migrants to come to their countries, they would like to get rid of them, to be very clear. And the way to get rid of them, to distribute them to those where they don't have. It's not fair. So do your job on your national basis. Defend your nation. If you need help, Hungary is ready to help. But it's your nation. You can't hide your interest behind the so-called European refugee system. Come on. It's about the nations who reject the migration. This is the fact. Migration is about the right of a community to decide with whom they would like to live with. That's all. So in Hungary, for example, it is written into the constitution that the public authorities must do everything to maintain the Christian values of our societies. Whatever does it mean? It's a serious discussion. What does it mean exactly? How to do it? But the intention is very clear that we have a tradition which we would like to maintain, and the state has a role to maintain it through their institutions. We can't force the people to follow certain religious convictions, but we can insist on that the spiritual content of education or the treatment in the hospital must have some basic values which strongly related to the cultural tradition, the Christian cultural tradition. So we try to do something like that. Strangely enough, when the Hungarian people get less and less religious, they support more and more Christian values. I'm surprised of that anyway, but this is the social phenomenon which is going on. I don't know exactly why, probably because of migration, probably because of the suppression coming from Brussels, liberal ocean of occupying everything, but the intention of the people to maintain something they call Christian cultural tradition is very strong, and the level of personal belief is decreasing. The fact is that those who are saying that our continent is aging and nations are aging is true. But each nation has the possibility to find the answer how to react on that. So the answer cannot be a centrally forced migration policy, definitely cannot be. So it's not an answer, not an acceptable way to find an answer, because that belongs to find an answer to each community, which means each nation, each country, individually. So what Hungarians are doing, we try to support families first. It is 65,000. Every year, the economic ministry publishes a figure saying that this year has no Hungarian people to work at 65 certain number of jobs, and we allow guest workers to have that job, only that job and only guest workers. And we copied the Qataris regulation basically anyway, to be modernized. That is a Qataris regulation. Guest workers can stay 2+1 year, and then they have to leave. It's over. If they would like to come back, they have a chance to come back another 3 years. Then they have to leave again. So they don't have the right to stay. We have to have that interruption because the crazy stupid European regulation says that if they stay continuously for a certain period, you can't push them out. But guest workers must leave if they we don't need you anymore. So this is a right of the nation to stay. Because we provide not a home, we provide a job possibility. That's the deal. It's a contract. So I think it's fair. So that's how we're doing that. But in long term, no any other solution, only to raise the number of the kids who are born. 2.1% is the rate we have to reach, and now in Hungary we have 1.58, 1.6, but we started from 1.2. So the tendency is positive, but it's very difficult to raise, because simply the young generation would not like to get more kids, which is a problem, leading us against the Christianity and related questions, spiritual life. So that's where we are living, and we hope that if we are able to continue for another 10 years, the pro-family policy, we can reach again 2.1 without migration. So that's what we are doing.
Okay, let me change the direction just a little bit.
Sorry, Monster is here.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to prevent you from expressing a conspiracy theory.
Because if the real reason why in many countries the liberal supports migration is not demography, which is my point, it's just pretext. What is the real reason? The real reason that they are collecting voters. That's so simple. If you look at the European history, the modern ages, it's obvious that the political competition was between two major blocks of the political life. Those who remain in the old traditional Christian framework, that's the Christian democracy conservative, and the modern guys who left that background, that was the left liberal something. And the competition between the two camps resulted in creating governments, correcting each other, changing of governments. So altogether it was quite well managed. It was not a bad system. But what was the basis of that? The basis of that those who stayed in the Christian tradition is, by and large, are the same as those who left. If the numbers are different, that kind of horizon of the political competition disappeared. And what the liberals and the leftists are doing, they recruit voters. They let the Muslim guys come in who will never vote for any Christian country, any Christian party. So now they are collecting new voters for the left. This is the real explanation. It's not about economy, it's not about democracy. It's just blah, blah, blah. The real reason is power. And because we are living in power, power means number of votes. And they're collecting votes. That's the reality as I see it. Sorry, that's what I call conspiracy theory. But I think it's close to reality. It's the relationship between Hungary and Russia, especially under this war which is going on. So it's a serious question. So we have a strategy, a very simple geopolitical strategy, which says that we would not like to have, again, common border with Russia. Because during the Soviet times, Soviet Union and Hungary has a common border. So we would not like to have it again. So therefore, we respect the international rights of Ukraine, sovereignty of Ukraine, and the right of the Ukrainian people to create their own and maintain their own state. So therefore, invasion of Putin against Ukraine is totally against the values of international relations and all the values we all respect anyway. So no question of that. But the Hungarian point of interest is that something must be between Russia and Hungary. So this is the number one. So we support Ukraine to survive somehow, which is now it's questioned because Ukraine is not anymore a sovereign state. Ukraine is now just a protectorate of the West. So without getting the money and the weapons from the European Union and United States, Ukraine as a state would cease to exist. So it's not a sovereign state anymore, just to be very clear. But something must exist there anyway. That's the first point. Second, Hungary has always a good economic relation with Russia. So I would not like to give up that kind of cooperation, because the war between Ukraine and Russia is not the war of the Hungarians. It's a war of two Slavic nations. One big Slavic nation attacked another one, and they have a war. And we don't behave like the Europeans who said, oh, it's our war, because it's about values, it's about international order whatsoever, so we are in the war, it's our war, but not fully, because we would not like to die. You know? So please, Ukrainians, die, we give the money and give the weapon and defend our values, please. So it's not so much our war to go into and to take the life risks of there to fight there, but just, you know, to finance your life. So I don't like that approach at all. But at the same time, it's obvious that each nation, even the Ukrainians, has the right to decide whether they would like to fight and die for their freedom or not. So I don't criticize the Ukrainians why they have a war against Ukraine, because they defend their own country or nation. So it's their decision. The other question is whether they are doing it cleverly or not. But it's their job to answer, not mine. But my job as an outsider is only to define and understand what is the reason of the war. And the reason of the war is very simple. It's called NATO membership. And just as a country who was occupied by the Russians for 45 years, I can say on personal experiences that Russians will never allow to have membership of Ukraine as it is now in NATO. For the geopolitical thinking, it's impossible. They will always do everything to have something between the Russian border and NATO countries' border. It could be called Ukraine, it could be war zone, it could be called war, whatever. But a buffer zone must exist between NATO and Ukraine. Probably it's not a legitimate request on behalf of the Russians, because it's outside the territory of Russia. So probably it's illegitimate, but this is the fact. And if we don't answer to the question clearly, whether we would like to encourage Ukraine to join NATO or to say, guys, you have to understand that you are a buffer zone country. You can't change your house number. So we create a reasonable policy which is adequate to the geographical position. So it's our option. Unfortunately, we are not going to deliver evidences that ceasefire and negotiations would be better than continue to war. We're just delivering evidences to the Ukrainians that die more, fight more, and you will win. It's definitely true. They cannot win. Because it's not about the values, it's not about my heart, it's not about my philosophical conviction, it's about reality. So that war has no solution on the battleground. What is even more sad, it's easy to imagine a situation when the Ukrainians will not get a better peace after losing hundreds of thousands of people than they would have got without having the war, which raised many philosophical and spiritual and moral issues. So I think what we Europeans are doing is bad. It's not targeted on ceasefire, and we don't confront it seriously with all the consequences of supporting a country who is in a war which cannot be won. So that's a big bulk of the problem and difficulties concerning the war. So it's not about Putin and I, it's about the truth, it's about the reality.